Good afternoon, everyone. It is Tuesday in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. My name is Adam Bittner, digital sports producer for the Post-Gazette. I'm joined today by Jason Mackey, our Pirates beat reporter at the Post-Gazette, for some more Pirates hot stove talk. The Kevin Newman trade over the weekend went down, so we're going to get Jason's thoughts on, was it a good trade and any other non-tender deadline news that Jason finds interesting. Before we get into that, just a reminder, if you like this video, please smash that like button. Help us out with the YouTube algorithm. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already so you don't miss a video with our reporters and maybe some special guests we might have coming up in the coming weeks. You don't want to miss any of that. And, of course, I'm going to leave the link to our subscription deal down in the description. $6 for 6 months of access to postgazette.com. Always a great deal. We'll get you almost right up until spring training. So check that out and enjoy over the holidays. With that, Jason, how are you and what are your initial thoughts on the Kevin Newman trade to the Cincinnati Reds?
I'm doing well, my friend. I'd also like to add that this episode of the Post-Gazette North Shore Drive or podcast, whatever we're calling this thing, is brought to you by Tool Time and Al Borland and Tim Taylor and the Collective Flannel. Adam and I did not coordinate this, but I don't know. You told me it was festive and how it's Thanksgiving week, so I don't know. We'll just roll with it. But I'm doing okay. I don't hate the Kevin Newman trade. I sort of expected a Kevin Newman trade. I thought it would be very strange if they kept Kevin Newman on the roster based on some of the other pieces they need to sort of look at. I mean, O'Neal Cruz needs to play, regardless of how anybody thinks about his performance against left-handed pitching, his performance against breaking stuff, his strikeouts, his errors. You can't look at O'Neal Cruz and say, like, this dude, we don't need to find out like who this guy is or give him some run or whatever. So, I mean, Newman is in direct opposition of him. And at the same time, like, I want to see what Rodolfo Castro has. I want to see what Tucupita Marcano has. I want to see what G1 Bay has, although I like Bay more in the outfield. Bottom line, you have these kids that just, like, if you're going to do this thing the right way, you got to give them the opportunity. And I like Kevin Newman a lot as a person. It's just he gets in the way of that. And they could get anything for him, and they did. I would do it. And I like the Dari Moretta kid they got from the Reds. I don't know what you think, Adam, but I mean, the kid's got some swing and miss stuff, throws decently hard, has a good mix. Like, you can work with that.
Duluth Trading, if you're out there, we're always ready for sponsors. So, hit us up if you know where to find us if you want to sponsor us with our shirts today. But anyway, I'll set it up for you like this, Jason. It was I think Kevin Newman was a productive veteran, right? And, he wasn't great, but I think he was like a little over a win above replacement, which is not nothing on a team that doesn't have a lot of guys who are clearly big league caliber contributors. Yes, there are a lot of guys coming up in the system, especially up the middle. This rebuild is going to hinge, I think, on some of those guys hitting and becoming productive guys. But other than O'Neal Cruz, who I agree, he's got to start. He's got to be the guy every day. You got to figure out what you have in him over a full season. Don't have an issue with him supplanting Kevin Newman as a starting shortstop for this team. The issue I think I have is that, I think Kevin Newman is a guy you can start the season with. He's a somewhat reliable veteran, a presence that if we're going to make this pivot that you and I have talked about on several videos now, from the Pirates being a team where you just play the kids to a team that's trying to win and maybe not, make the playoffs next season, or maybe even not reach the 500 mark, but is trying to trend up. To me, Kevin Newman's the kind of guy you keep around. And if there are players that exceed him, that outplay him and prove either in spring training or, maybe like April, May, they play better than him, you can make this move then. You can get a lottery ticket like the pitcher they acquired at any time, I feel like. And that's pretty much my gripe with the trade, is that it feels a little bit like, well, he was going to get a sizable raise in arbitration, and so we're just going to take our lottery ticket now and walk away. I don't know if I agree that it's a move that you could understand at a certain time. I just don't know if that time is now.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, and I wouldn't say you're altogether wrong. I agree with a lot of what you're saying. The issue I think I would take with it, or where I would seek to disagree, is just saying that you need what he brings now. I think the whole like hand-holding thing gets a little overblown, like setting an example and veteran leadership and whatever. Like O'Neal Cruz is going to do what O'Neal Cruz does. Like I hope that's more consistency. I hope that's more, defensive responsibility, more discipline in the strike zone and whatever. I don't think Kevin Newman's going to change any of that. You want Rodolfo Castro to mature. You want Tucupita Marcano to mature. I mean, shoot, if anything, they would be better served getting a Spanish-speaking middle infielder and bring him in there for Newman. And that's nothing against Kevin Newman. It's just like there is a legitimate language barrier between Newman and the bulk of their prospects. But again, I think that stuff's sort of overblown. I look at where can the Pirates, because we know, I mean, let's be honest here. This isn't a rip on Nutting or anybody else. Like, their amount of external ads are going to be targeted and slim. They're not going to spend a lot of money. So what little they do spend, I want to be in the most advantageous places. Right now, to me, that's the bullpen, pitching. An extra starter would be great. I mean, they still don't have a major league caliber catcher, although I expect them to sign Roberto Perez. I mean, they have a list of guys that they need to sign here that does not include middle infield. Like, right, if the season started tomorrow, middle infield would not be a concern for them. How to improve the pitching staff, sure. And I like the starting group, but the way the bullpen finished, like there's just not enough there. I'd like to see a veteran in there. And I think that would really help that group. So it's not all like a group of whatever. And then like Will Crow to David Bednar, like you need more in that spot where I don't think you need as much up the middle. But I do understand what you're saying. Like it's not ripping on Kevin Newman. I think Kevin Newman is a perfectly serviceable major league shortstop. I think he's going to have a pretty decent career being a reliable glove man up the middle. And, to me, he looks like Clint Barmas with dark hair. Like there's nothing wrong with that. That helps teams. Teams need that. And, the Pirates are not one right now, but I mean, the Reds have a hole until Ellie De La Cruz comes up. Great. He's going to plug that. And I would imagine when De La Cruz comes up, Newman's probably going to get traded to somebody else, assuming he plays and plays well. And good for him. I like dealing with Kevin Newman, but I just don't see a spot for him here.
I think you set up my next question well, because I was going to use the name Clint Barmas as kind of an example of what I think could be helpful. And I agree with you. Clubhouse leadership, especially when, as you pointed out, there's not a ton of Spanish speakers that's an important thing. And so I don't want to just like make this all about clubhouse chemistry. I think there's a reason for Pirates fans to talk about production on the field. I think you've seen the flashes with Rodolfo Castro. I think you and I have disagreed about, how legit we can take them going into next season. But, I'd like to see him get time too. I'd like to get the answer to that question. And I get it. I think it's more about just having a reliable baseline of production to fall back on if one of these guys struggles or if two of these guys struggles. Because, as we've talked about on this show before, they've had some trouble getting prospects to make that transition from AAA to the big leagues. And that's something that was true under the Huntington regime and really hasn't changed under the Cherington regime. And I guess it's more about like what this pivot's supposed to look like. If we're talking about this year's coming team more in the lines of what we've seen the last couple of years, but just a little bit better, then I get it. But if you want to see a big step forward, I guess that's where I see Kevin Newman's role in, kind of being that reliable baseline of production.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. I think one of the things we're starting to learn here, and you mentioned that pivot point, and that's what got me thinking of this. Like there is a point here where the Pirates need to take into consideration what they have, what is coming, and also what they need. And they can't take what they need and plop it down in front of what they have coming. And what I mean by that is like G-Man Choi, they bring him in here to split time or whatever. G-Man Choi is probably not the long-term. Well, I know he's not the long-term answer at first base. Like it's going to be Malcolm Nunez or Matt Gorski or Blake Sable or Andy Rodriguez or whomever else. Like you need to leave a little bit of variability or openness for somebody to earn a spot. And I think that's a little bit of what we're seeing with Kevin Newman too, Adam. I mean, you lock this into Newman, you lock him into playing, and then you're preventing guys from earning that spot. And I don't want to see that happen. Like, that's why I think Roberto Perez is a good sign for them. Like you can bring Roberto Perez back and play him when you have to, but then when you don't, split him with Henry Davis, split him with Andy Rodriguez, split him with Blake Sable, or whoever comes up here and earns that spot. And that's the way this should go. Anybody, and I think that's something that the Pirates can be criticized for pretty openly. Like, if you're producing at AAA, get up here. Man, we don't have any better options in the major leagues. Like, if you're good, let's see it. And that drives me crazy. And I understand why it exists. Believe me, with like Super 2 stuff and service time manipulation, like, screw that. If you're good, come up here and play, man. Like, there's a spot for you. And I want to see that with Endy. I want to see it. I mean, shoot, if Nick Gonzalez comes up here, if Leover Peguero comes up here, like, if I was taught in baseball from a long, long time ago, like, if you hit, we'll find a place for you. If you hit, we'll get you into a spot where we want you to hit. And I don't know who's going to do that. Some guys will, some guys won't, but I'd like to see the Pirates establishing a trajectory of, if you hit, we're going to find a spot for you.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't want to see Kevin Newman take someone's spot. I want to see the Pirates get to a point where someone takes Kevin Newman's spot and you make a deal like this, maybe a little bit later, but I'm going to give you a chance to sell me on Dari Moretta and why, maybe he was a guy worth going out and getting now, as opposed to maybe in like May or something. If Ji-hwan Bae is tearing the cover off the ball and you need to get him in the lineup, sell me on this prospect and why maybe he's more than a lottery ticket. That's how it strikes me.
Yeah, I mean, he is a lottery ticket. Look, I'm not gonna sit here and lie to you and act like I have the answers for why Dari Moretta is going to be any good. But I mean, here's the thing with the Pirates bullpen, and if you look at other bullpens, like the Tampa Bay Rays are one to me that I think they just do it the right way. And what I mean by that is they have guys who throw different pitches from different arm slots, different body builds, different velocities. Like, they don't come at you with the same thing twice. And that's what the Pirates should be doing. And that's what the Pirates are trying to do. And they're not doing it well enough. They're not there. They've made mistakes. But I mean, that's what Cherington's talking about when he said we've been very sinker slider heavy, which they have been. And Moretta throws a four-seamer with the slider off of that. They haven't had as much swing and miss in their bullpen. They have guys that are more, again, sinker slider, and they're pitching to contact and theoretically getting ground balls. You want guys who can get swing and miss. They talked about Robert Stevenson being one of those guys late in 22, which is true. He has a really good slider and he's got swing and miss. Well, Moretta's sort of that same guy. He should be able to miss bats. No, he hasn't done that. He's been killed by home run balls, missing his spots. He probably needs to refine his pitch mix. If you look at his heat map, it's horrendous. Like, he's throwing sinkers at the top of the zone, which is not what you do, obviously. But, if you would drill into the four-seamer usage, the slider usage, you can play with that stuff and maybe find a serviceable reliever in there. We've talked a lot about Neil Huntington, the former regime, and building bullpens. Like, they don't go out and get guys, or they didn't go out and get guys based on resume. They went out and got them based on like what they do, what they can do. How can we manipulate this guy? How can we accentuate this guy's strength and not hide him, but like put him in a role that it puts him in a position to succeed? And so that's what the Pirates need to do. And Dari Moretta is not a world beater, but like does some things well. When you throw 96 with a slider that gets 40+% whiff, I mean, that somewhere in there is a good reliever. Can the Pirates figure it out? I don't know, but I understand why you're going to, especially for somebody who you'd basically non-tender, but you're going to try to bring that out in the guy. And whether this regime is successful building a bullpen or not, it's contingent on fixing guys like Dari Moretta and a whole handful of other ones they've tried with.
Yeah, and I mean, I will say the last time we were on here, I was talking about getting bullpen help. And if Dari Moretta turns out to be something, maybe not the greatest in the world, but if he turns out to be helpful, then I think that makes this a good trade automatically. So I think the bar is kind of low for success.
No,
here.
He shouldn't be it, Adam. He can't be it. They need, like, when you talked about bullpen help, and I agreed with you, like, we wanted seventh inning guy.
Oh, yeah, I want more guys for sure.
Little mileage. Yeah, that's not correct.
If he can be one of those guys,
yeah.
I think that's a good thing. And I think that makes the trade a success. So, it's a low bar. We'll see if the Pirates can clear it. The thing that prompted the Kevin Newman trade was the 40-man roster deadline, non-tender deadline. The Pirates had to make some moves.
Steelers on the brain.
I know, right? It's been a lot in the last day or so, but the Pirates had to make some moves, and Kevin Newman was one. And you and I can pick it apart the way we did, but end of the day, they still had to make something happen. And that, what were some of the other headlines that stuck out to you going into that non-tender deadline on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, it was a busy week of stuff for the Pirates. I'll start like the beginning of the week. Andy Rodriguez gets added to the 40. Mike Burrows gets added to the 40. That's not, I mean, they're going to be there. Those guys are going to be at PNC. The one thing that really stood out to me from the whole week, Adam, is Malcolm Nunez not being added to the 40-man roster. I mean, this is a guy, they picked him up in the Jose Quintana, Chris Stratton trade from the Cardinals. Hits a lot of home runs, has a lot of power, did very well before and after the trade, still young, only 21 years old. I look at this kid as a possible first baseman of the future. And I know that first basemen don't often get taken in the Rule 5 draft. At the same time, you've got a kid with a lot of power in the Cardinals largely in the Cardinals organization. Like, people are going to realize how this kid is developed. They know how to develop position players. You're going to say, could I stash him on a major league roster for a year? And boy, I could come up with a lot of reasons why you could do that. So, like, that scares me. I didn't like that move. I understand if you have like a Matt Gorski, a Blake Sable, guys where the Pirates think, you know what, Mason Martin snuck through last year. We can get by with that. Gorski hit 13 home runs in May, like, struck out a lot. Other teams aren't going to value that as much. And Malcolm Nunez had a darn good year. He's a young player, developed the right way. So that scares me. But as far as everything else, like, the non-tender thing, the only surprise I had other than Newman, and again, I expected them to non-tender Newman. I mean, the fact that they traded him and got something for him, great. I'm a little surprised they went back with Dwayne Underwood Jr. Everything else sort of went as I thought it would, but Dwayne did not pitch particularly well last year, pitched a lot. I would argue he was maybe misused. I just thought they'd think maybe we could replace that production for cheaper, and we want to give bullpen opportunities to somebody that maybe we didn't quite know about. I think they have a pretty good read on what Dwayne Underwood Jr. has been able to do. But, I guess the opposite side of that, Adam, would be that he does take the ball. He's been durable, has pitched a lot. So on a young team, you do need guys like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that could be an example of, what I was talking about with Kevin Newman is someone should be able to take his job, right? But there's, I think an argument to be made for having a guy like that on the roster. Jason, we're a little less now, I think, than 2 weeks out from the winter meetings, which is going to be, when things, probably start happening in earnest around baseball. And
not that I'm excited to go to San Diego or anything.
Yeah, that's a great location this year too. That's one of my favorite American cities. But is there anything you see happening, between now and then? What's your read on where things stand? Or is this just going to be a matter of waiting for the pitching market to get moving at the winter meetings, or maybe a little bit after, and then seeing where the Pirates fit into that?
Yep, I think it's the latter. I would love to think it's the former, Adam. And I think one day the Pirates will get to a spot where they're, at least reasonable players when it comes to like free agents and signing people. We're just not there. I mean, and this is going to sound crude, but like anybody in their right mind, why the heck would you play for the Pirates right now? Really? I mean, if you had other options, would you come here? And so that's what this is. You're going to wait things out. Guys who have production on their resume are going to see, well, how good can I do? That's a lot of people ask me, like, who are targets? Who are guys the Pirates are going to sign? And, obviously they're going to compile their lists. They're going to come up with guys that he would fit well for us. We could afford him. He might come here and play for us, but like nobody's going to commit to that right now. They're going to, have pie in the sky dreams of playing for the Yankees or the Braves or somebody else. So anyway, I look at Roberto Perez playing winter ball. That's probably a contract that's fairly easy to get done, assuming things go well there. I'd love to see them revisit some extension contract talk. I don't have a lot of optimism that will happen. Maybe they add some guys on like minor league deals, guys looking for work, but I don't expect I don't expect any huge transactions. And, the last thing that people ask about a lot, and you've asked about it and we've talked about it, like, what do you do with Brian Reynolds? What do you do with David Bednar? And, I'd love to see them extend those guys. I don't think they're going to extend them. And I don't think a trade's going to come along that's going to knock Ben Cherington's socks off and motivate him to trade them either. Like, I just think you're going to continue bobbling along and doing the stance that they are right now. But I don't think that's going to stop, teams from inquiring and stuff leaking out through agents and all the other crap that happens, about, oh, Brian Reynolds is attracting trade interest at the winter meetings. Like, I'm sure that's going to happen. But that's about it.
Yeah, I think the Pirates are in a weird place in the pitching market. And I think we've talked about this in previous videos where you're not going to compete for the upper crust, obviously. And, that may never be true. But you've also had success rehabbing guys like Tyler Anderson, Jose Quintana, and then flipping them at the deadline. I think a lot of fans would like to see someone in the middle there. Not a long-term deal, but not a 1-year flip candidate either. Maybe a guy who can be here for 2 to 3 years. Is there anyone possibly on the radar that kind of fits that mold of being kind of not a long-term piece, but not a short-term one either? I'll put it this way: an AJ Burnett type. Obviously, he was acquired in a trade, but something like that where you get a guy for a shorter period of time who can help you, but you're not locking yourself into forever.
You know what, man? Like, that's the good part about this offseason. There are a couple guys like that. And I mean, nobody with AJ Burnett's temperament. Like, shoot, I would sign AJ Burnett just to like hang out in the clubhouse and, stare at people and scare them into doing the right things. Like, I feel like there's value with that. I wish they'd bring him on as a consultant, but no, I mean, there are pitchers out there that would make good reclamation projects. Somebody asked me this in a chat the other day, and it got me thinking a little bit of it. Like Michael Pineda is one. Drew Smiley is another. Sean Manaea is a third. I'm going to flip back in my chat. Michael Wacha is somebody I say, like, these guys have pitched well before. They have some things, and what the Pirates offer right now is opportunity. They can say, like they did to Quintana, like they do to Anderson, this is where we see your stuff. This is where we see, you being able to get outs and change, and we're going to give you a start every 5th day to do it. And then at that point, like, that's going to be beneficial to those guys because they know, okay, well, I can come to Pittsburgh and the team might stink, but I can at least get my career back on track. I mean, look what Pittsburgh did for Quintana. Look what Pittsburgh did for Tyler Anderson. They've been great. It's a great opportunity. So, that's going to carry weight with people. Maybe a Michael Wacha might think, you know what, I need to take a step back before I take a step forward and become what a lot of people thought I was going to be a couple of years ago. And so, I mean, I look at those guys. Like, you need to look at guys who didn't do crap last year. They might have been hurt the way Quintana and Anderson were, and they're looking for an opportunity to prove themselves, and they've pitched well before. And so when I think of that mold and guys who would, potentially come here, I think of Smiley, Pineda, Wacha, and what's the other one? I don't remember. I don't know. I rattled off a couple names there, but I mean, that's what I'd be looking at.
Well, those are some names to keep an eye on then, everyone, if you're looking for, something to dig into here in the next couple of weeks, hopefully over some restful times during Thanksgiving. Jason, any final thoughts before we sign off here?
Sean Manaea. It was bothering me that I couldn't.
There we go.
Sean Manaea. Thank you. Hang in there. I mean, those are my thoughts. I deal with this. I joke with people that I'm like a professional shrink, not in a good way, or I'm not a good one, but like, people are so mad about the Pirates and they want to see this working out. And I get it. I do think this team's going to be a little bit better. I do think there are going to be some good things at PNC Park this season. We talked about some of them with Castro, Cruz, add Reynolds, Sawinski, Bay. Like, it's going to be an okay season. It really is. And I think they will get this figured out. I think there are going to be more good stories than bad. It's funny talking to a lot of their prospects. And again, their minor league system objectively is ranked highly. Not the best. It's not the best in baseball. It gets overblown a little bit, but like, these guys don't all suck, and they're not all going to suck when they get to the major leagues. They're also not going to all be great. Like, you can go, certain places on Twitter and get that opinion as well. But like, they're really, really, really good people. And I'm talking about like Priester, Burrows, Endy, Henry Davis, like Jared Triolo, Colin Selby. I've been writing about these guys and talking to them and forming relationships with them for years. They're really good people, good players. They care a lot. They're not all going. Nick Gonzalez is another one. Peguero, like, I can go on. They're not all going to be terrible. I can promise you that. And so it will improve. That's my final thought, I guess. It's just hang in there. It will get better. We'll get through this together. And on the other side, there's going to be some fun baseball. I'm convinced of it.
Something to be thankful for Pirates fans. Jason, we will reserve the right to hop back on here whenever
anytime
news breaks. If it's not until the winter meetings, we'll see what happens. We'll have the emergency button ready to go to do an emergency podcast / YouTube video. Jason, thanks for your time. And for the rest of you, we will be doing more talk this week. More Steelers Bengals breakdown on Wednesday with Chris Carter, and a special guest to be named later. More hockey talk at some point. Maybe even get some Thanksgiving side dish talk in here somewhere along the line. So stay tuned for all that, and we will talk to you again soon.
Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you liked the video, please like it and subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you enjoyed it on Apple Podcasts, please rate us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts. For 6 months of digital access to post-gazette.com for just $6, click the link down in the description.